All right. We are going to continue our journey of the Yoga Sutras. Today we are on Sutra 137. 137. The translation is interesting. I have some things to say about that. We're working through the different ways to concentrate. So we've talked about using the breath. We've talked about sense perceptions and light. And this one says, or by concentrating on a great soul's mind, which is totally freed from attachment to sense objects. When I read the translation of the words, which he also offers in this book, it says, free from attachment for sense objects or mind stuff. Free from attachment for sense objects or mind stuff. So, the part about a great soul's mind, I don't know if he stuck that in there or if that's implied, but I want to talk about both those things. So concentrating on a great soul's mind, which is totally freed from attachment to sense objects. Let's start with the attachment to sense objects. In my experience, I think you've probably experienced this too. The more vrittis, fluctuations we put into our mind, the more our mind fluctuates. So an example for me is, let's just use the news. If I spend all my time watching the news, my mind is filled with what's on the news. And what's on the news is usually stuff that's meant to be interesting. In our culture, that often means things that are not good. And so if we spend a lot of time concentrating on things that are unpleasant, then our mind starts to work with those thoughts. So what we put in has an effect on the fluctuations of our mind. So part of the prescription is, at least what's been for me in the last 15 or so years, is to be very mindful of what I put in my mind. And I'm better at it sometimes than others. It's not bad, but it will have an effect. So this morning when I was driving in and I got in my car, I was like, oh, be mindful of what you put in. Don't turn on the radio, even though I have a very short drive. And then the other part of my mind said, oh, it's exactly 7 o'clock. They're probably just going to give you the highlights of what's happening. Just tune in for a minute. So I did. And the news was about what's happening in Hawaii right now, in Maui. And it's horrible, what the fires have done there. And it got me choked up. I was thinking about just the people that were totally taken by surprise by what happened because of the circumstances and the devastation. And it affected my energy. Not in a way that's like I shouldn't want to feel these feelings about this horrible thing, but it had an immediate effect on my energy. And I had an awareness of that because it was part of my practice this morning to just be aware. So the inputs are powerful. The second part of what he asks us, whether Swami Satchidananda threw this in here on his own or not, is to concentrate on a great soul's mind, because those minds are freed from attachment to sense objects. So what is a great soul? I think the obvious ones are Jesus, Buddha, Allah, spiritual leaders. So that's a path for attention in our practice. Some of you might already have some practice that is akin to that. So he's saying those are good practices. I recalled this morning an experience I had when I was doing some breath work. So I've done lots of different kind of techniques as a seeker of spiritual experiences, and one of them is a breath practice that's sometimes called holotropic breathing. The first time I ever did it, I had no expectation of what was going to happen on purpose. I didn't research it. I wanted to just do the breathing and see what it was. And the very first time I did it, I had this vision of the Virgin Mary, the Virgin of Guadalupe specifically, the Mexican image that's got the like rays of light coming out all the way around, the Buddha, Sue Finkel. So we have a teacher here. Her name is Sue Finkel. She's a very special human being. She came to me in the same series of sort of visions that I had. And this other guy named Moses Love, who's a yoga teacher who's traveled through Savannah a few times, and I just know him. And it was just a really profound experience for me. I've never really had saintly visions before spontaneously. And it really struck me, and I've spent some time kind of contemplating it since the experience, which was about probably 10 years ago now. You may or may not have had experiences like this, where you have a vision of somebody that's got saintly qualities, including Sue Finkel. If you have, I think that's a great place to put your attention on sort of that possibility of our attention on people, saints or higher beings of our own experience. So I just offer that. In my Chitta Vritti this morning, I started thinking about, a lot of people have patron saints, which is a practice of praying to your patron saint, asking for support. So I looked up who my patron saint might be. I've never done this research before. This is how my seeking works. I read these books and I'm like, who's my patron saint? And one way you can find your patron saint is based on your name. And there's a Saint Catherine. And interesting is she's a patron saint of many things, including fire and protection for firefighters. Well, that's kind of struck me that I looked that up today. And that's what I learned. I'm going to do more kind of delving into St. Catherine because I'm curious. I'm going to invite you in the next 15 minutes that we have not to Google your patron saint yet, maybe later if you're curious, if you don't already have one. Yeah, this is how the mind works. Anyhow, I'll guide us into a meditation, just drawing our attention to something higher than the mundane, which I think is really the calling here, to put our attention on something that's not a sense object that's going to distract us. So, having said maybe too much, I'm going to invite us to take our posture for practice. If you like to close your eyes, you can go ahead and close your eyes. Take a couple moments and sense into your physical body. So get yourself supported, upright, and grounded. always start with my breath. It's anchoring into the power of that mind-body connection. For this practice, I invite you to let your breath just be natural. Let it flow on its own. Picture in your mind's eye a being who you consider holy or even just more enlightened than you might feel yourself day to day. A higher power. Might be somebody like the Virgin of Guadalupe. If you don't have somebody that comes to mind easily, just for the sake of today's practice, hold an image of the Virgin in your mind's eye. In that image, draw a picture of the light emanating from your being. Often, Christian saints will have a halo or a sense of light. It's emanating from within. Humans among us, like Sue, sometimes they come into the room and we feel that light. It's a sense of lightness surrounding. Many of the Christian saints are protectors. Generate a feeling of safety and protection being held in the light. In the Buddhist tradition, there's a goddess named Kuan Yin, deity. She's a protector, a motherly figure offering compassion. Cultivate a sense of being held in compassion. Might feel like a warm glow of that light around you. Notice any sense of a warm glow within you as well. Sensing into your own compassionate heart. If there's any feeling of heaviness, imagine, visualize the light. It's coming into that space. Imagine the light just holding that space, not necessarily trying to change it, just cohabiting with whatever's here. sometimes it's hard to feel the light within. And a practice like this can help us just draw on other people's light as needed. Feel their light, find our own. Take a bigger breath. And then take another nice big breath. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, move any way you need to. I'm going to fill your brains with a few more factoids. The seeker's path is so fun for me because I start to do one thing and I'm like, ooh, I'm curious. And I just go look all these things up. I looked up I haven't done this, learned more about the Virgin of Guadalupe this morning. I didn't realize this, but the kind of story of her origin is that she was seen by a man in Mexico. She's a patron saint of Mexico. But when you look at the iconography of her, it's Toltec and Christian imagery merged together because of the Toltec tradition in Mexico, which just is like such a lovely thing to me, that this icon really is bringing together more than just the Christian history. Like, it's bringing in that Toltec tradition in Mexico. It's just interesting. I hope you have a wonderful day full of curiosity. Happy birthday, Fran and Jan. Namaste, everybody.